Welcome back to the Criticizer of Conlangs with your host, James Pigeon. And today the episode is on Kotava. Kotava is an international auxiliary language published by Canadian linguist Staren Fetcey in 1978. From Kotava.org, quote, "In the total village that became our Earth planet, the need for a language tool of communication universal appears each day more and more necessary. Any natural languages tend to fill its role. The problem is that they are undissociable from civilizations and cultures whose they result and that they convey. Kotava, as a built language, is neutral from this point of view, in particular through its lexicon. Its characteristics and its qualities return it, as of now, ready to play the role of a language subsidiary of communication, discover and take part in a humanistic project and universal, utopian, and realistic." And even though her English isn't great, the goals of Kotava can still be found. An easy phonology, a simple grammar, and seemingly paramount not to favor any one language. Many supposedly international Conlangs have been biased to one or another existing language or group of languages, like Unish with English or Communicationssprach with French, but Kotava wanted none of that, to be completely a priori. So, phonology. Kotava has 19 consonants. The natural language with the least consonants is probably Rotokas with 6, then with the most is probably Southern Khoisan with around 130. English has 24. So 19 is probably a decent amount, the same as Standard Mandarin for international use. But was it all strictly necessary? For one, the voiciness distinction in many of Kotava's phonemes is not universal. In general, a truly good international phonology would probably have to use less than 19 consonants. But these are pretty good. Now, the vowels. Kotava has the 5-vowel system, which you may recognize from Spanish, Toquipona, and Swahili. Very typical and pretty good for an international language. If optimized for pure simplicity, it could go down even further to like a 3-vowel system, but this is fine if you want your language to actually sound good. For reference, the language with the least vowels are probably the languages related to Abkhaz, which have around 2, and the language with the most vowels is probably Ta'a with around 31. English has between 14 and 25, which is considered to be on the very high side. Orthography. Kotava uses the Latin alphabet in a pretty standard way, with each letter having one sound associated with it. The only things that might throw off an English speaker for a second is X being H, J being J, and C being Sh, which was definitely one of the more interesting ways I saw C presented. Unacute is used to mark stress, which is pretty standard. Kotavan grammar is pretty standard. Firstly, the personal pronouns are jin, rin, in, min for we including the speaker, shin for we excluding the speaker, ween, and sin. Kotava has 3 tenses, past, present, and future, with the addition of 4 moods, indicative, imperative, conditional, and relative. Kotava verbs are conjugated for person with endings, and the tenses are interestingly denoted with interfixes. Verbs also conjugate regularly, even to be. Kotava also has 5 voices, which are active, passive, reflexive, reciprocal, and complementary. These are indicated by auxiliary words. Kotava has no grammatical gender, but biological gender can be marked with suffixes. It's claimed that the degree of optional grammatical detail can allow for a lot of subtlety on the part of speakers. If this sort of thing is done right, it can help to accomplish both goals of having an easy yet expressive grammar. However, a problem could arise because one essentially has to learn all the grammar in case somebody speaks to them using the harder yet optional grammatical features. So, is Kotava's grammar simple and easy? Well, yes and no. While it is obviously more regular than nearly any natural language, there are some more advanced concepts that, as I said before, while being optional to say, are not necessarily optional to hear. And in terms of vocabulary, my usual test of seeing how globally recognizable the words are doesn't really work here, as recognizability wasn't the goal at all, and all vocabulary was completely invented. Because of this, the test would be pretty useless. Instead, how about what I did for the much maligned Ishkran episode, where I just dropped 10 words I enjoyed for whatever reason. Ahem. Garfelaf. kagaila, za, shkodacha, ikadrage, pretka alcho, wungel, hoyavosa, basakolawelka, zuarteem. The number system is just base 10. Could have done something more creative and gotten really unique with it, but makes sense as base 10 was the most recognizable for most people on Earth. Also to mention, these all have the cardinal suffix of oi attached. Other suffixes exist, like ia for ordinals, da for years, ka for days, jon a for multiplication, fuche a for division, and vol for negatives. Overall, this is interesting and innovative and a decent number system. And for the spoken sample, pater noster. Shinaf gadik goe gelt digis. Rinaf yort zo tutumtar. Rinafa gazara artfir. Rinafa kuranira moe tawava litam kerzoaskir. Va vieleaf beg pushin rezilil. Va kota shinafa kantara ihel. Tum pu pagasik dere ihev. Ise ku zonuka vashin me lefplekul. Volse gurote vashin tunuyal. Overall, Kotava is a good language. It has grammar which is both simple and complex, making it easy to learn yet capable of crafting great literary subtlety. As well, the unique a priori vocabulary means that the language isn't really biased to any natural languages, intentionally at least. This is also more minor, but Kotava actually sounds good. Can't a man just appreciate good phonoaesthetics? Unfortunately, the grammar is also a double-edged sword. As noted before, the fact that the grammar has adjustable complexity isn't as nice as it sounds, because it forces everyone to understand the most complex register in case somebody uses it with them. Also, this contradicts my point about the vocabulary, but it's another double-edged sword, because the vocabulary isn't intentionally biased towards any languages. It's also not recognizable to, well, speakers of any other languages. Also, the phonology is not really optimized to be universal. It could be simpler, but that, again, would disturb the phonoaesthetics I praised earlier. A very underrated language. In the end, Kotava is even better than Universal Glot, as it's more regular and the grammar is better designed. It's also more universal, while Universal Glot is very Eurocentric. This was argued by a commenter in episode 2 that it was okay that Universal Glot was Eurocentric because it wasn't explicitly claiming to be a world language and would be a good European auxlang. And while it would be a good European auxlang, it seems pretty implied by the name of the language being a Universal Glot that it was meant to be a global language. If that's the case, and that's the assumption that's being gone off, this may be controversial, but on my list, Kotava is the best interlang I reviewed so far. Leave any requests in the comments, and stay tuned for next week, when the episode will be on Neo-Latino Romance.